Morning and welcome back to another episode of Talk with the Top. I am your Rising Six President, Staff Sergeant Murphy, and today we have a super special guest stopping by for a conversation, Distribution and Deployment Flight Chief Master Sergeant Croswell. How you doing today, sir?
Doing well, thank you for having me.
Appreciate you stopping by, sir. Before we dive into the podcast, I want to give you your props for our last flight PT that we had. Ultimate frisbee. You threw the Tom Brady frisbee passes right over my head. In my head, while I was seeing you winding up, I was like, "Oh, he made a mistake. I'm about to take this one out the air." Quickly, I did realize I can't jump that high anymore, but I thought for sure I would be able to run it down. I couldn't run it down either. So once the frisbee got about like 8 or 9 yards out of my reach, and I know it wasn't gonna catch it, I was like, I hope our airman drops it. He didn't drop it. Wanted to give you those props and good job on the last PT session, but I kind of forgot, so I was thinking about it today, so I wanted to start off giving you those props, sir. So we wanted to thank you for being here. We know that you're a very busy person, and thank you for stopping by, sir. So to start off, I remember when we was talking about doing the podcast, you had mentioned that you had never done anything like that before, and that we would make it happen. So can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your career as well?
Okay. So Chief Master Sergeant Matthew Croswell joined the Air Force delayed enlisted in December of 2000 and joined in February of 2001, so prior to 9/11. First joined out of Iowa, so just a little tidbit about me. But first base was Barksdale Air Force Base. I was a cyber troop back then, a computer systems operator. And then from Barksdale, I proceeded on to Korea. And in Korea, I worked at not 7th Air Force, but the 607th ACOMS, which is in the Keikoik HTAC area, so AOC. And then from there, we backtrack a little bit. In Barksdale is where I met my wife. When we PCS to Korea back then, you could not PCS with a spouse, so we went engaged to Korea and were able to get married prior to our mid-tour, and that way we were able to go to the same installation. And then fortunate enough, our chiefs worked together to get us an assignment out of there together. She was initially supposed to go to Aviano, me to Kadena, but they were able to curtail her Aviano assignment and get us to Kadena together. And so from Korea, we went to Kadena, and then we were here for 3 years. Working in the 18th Com Squadron. We had our first child here, and then we moved to Langley Air Force Base, where I worked at Inosk East, which is an enterprise level element within the com world. We were there for 5 years. Unfortunately, we had a family situation happen that caused us to do humanitarian, and we were able to get back to my wife's home of record, which was Kadena, and we came back here. But during that time, I had to do what they call a direct cross training, meaning you don't get any tech school. The Air Force gave me a list of 6 options, and when I gave them my list of order of which I wanted, they said, "That's nice, but we're going to pick. We don't care." And they gave me log plans, not knowing at the time that it was the best choice out of the list for me. And so when I arrived here, just down the hall, I knocked on the door, and they had no idea I was coming. They didn't know who I was from Adam. But welcomed me with open arms, and the rest is history for career field wise. But after we left here, we went to Warner Robins, which was an awesome opportunity for me. We were apprehensive about that PCS because we weren't sure about Middle Georgia, what life would be like there. Neither one of us had ever been in the deep south, so to speak. But it ended up being awesome. Great community, great base, great mission. Was in the combat comm group there, which was somewhere I always wanted to go as a comm troop. Unfortunately, went back as a logistics troop. And instead of deploying out and doing the cool stuff, my responsibility was deploying the teams out to do the cool stuff. So, but while there, I was fortunate enough to make senior master sergeant because I had a lot of great leaders, and they provided me some opportunities to do some really cool stuff, and sit in some really nice, not nice, but really unique leadership positions from what a 2G typically does, and it definitely helped my development and helped me grow as a young master sergeant into a senior select. And so from there, did a special duty down to MacDill, working at SOCCENT headquarters. led the exercise cell down there for the command for a while, and got to travel to a lot of cool places. My wife retired from the military prior to our move there. We built a beautiful home. Thought that was going to be the forever home, and we were going to retire out of there because, again, I'm not one of those individuals who was like, I'm going to make senior, I'm going to make chief. When I made senior, I was like, what a bonus. Figured that was the end of the career. And then was fortunate enough to be the J4 director while I was there. Not director, J4 SEL while I was there. And I guess that was a good enough push to get me to chief. And once you make chief in a 2G world, there are very few positions and locations you can go. And so the family had to get together and make a decision. One, do I accept the stripe? Because it meant I had to leave, and we weren't planning on the family leaving with us or with me. And we decided to do it because we were fortunate enough to get Shaw Air Force Base for my next assignment. And I was on the AFCENT staff there in the A4, but was capable of 7-hour drive home or about an hour flight out of Charleston into Tampa. And so because of the cost, it worked out for us, and I was able to get home quite a bit. But I was only there for about 14 months, and then I was non-volled to Hawaii. Again, that sounds odd that I had to be non-volled into there, because who doesn't want to go to Hawaii? But I was, again, unable to take the family due to my oldest being in his final year of high school. And so I ended up spending about 3.5 years away from the family. Hawaii was a great opportunity, being the 2G fam for the theater, experiencing theater level planning, being at the center of coordinating in some of those CPXs, and then working with all the wings, learning about all the different challenges that each element has, some similar, some unique, dealing with the vast number of senior leaders that are on staff, an amazing experience. But we had planned on retiring out of there as well. However, when Kadena became an option, I worked to curtail my assignment in Hawaii to get here, because this got my wife back to her home. Her mother is Okinawan, father retired Marine, and she spent most of her life growing up here. So any opportunity I can take to benefit my family at this point in my career is pretty much a primary focus of what drives me. So here we are at Kadena, place I love, place I consider home, and we'll see what the future holds.
That's awesome. Sir, can you speak a little bit about, I've been in for 24 years, can you speak to the benefits of being able to have a platform like this to be able to come and speak on for maybe the airmen who don't exactly know who you are, don't feel comfortable to just try to knock on the door and get some advice from you? Can you speak to some benefits to a platform like this for our younger airmen?
Absolutely. I think technology has done wonders for us. It also has the potential to have some negatives, right? Everything you say is online forever, and if the wrong people get a hold of it, they can take it, twist it, manipulate it. But the positives, I feel, far outweigh that, because they do immediately reach a much larger portion of people, and they give people access to individuals that maybe they don't have access to on a daily basis. So I think the way you guys do it, it allows everybody within the flight or the wing, the squadron, to sit down and if they desire, listen or watch us have a conversation about things that they may be interested in or answers that they may be looking for, but they don't have either the time, the ability, or the what's the word I'm looking for? I lost the word, I apologize. But maybe they don't have the time or the ability to get into my office and sit down and talk with me. And sometimes that can be scary for a younger airman. They're feel like they're jumping the chain, or they just are uncomfortable walking into senior leaders and asking certain questions. So maybe this gives them an answer they've been looking for that they just weren't comfortable asking.
Sure. So with being to Okinawa, being at Kadena 3 times, what are some of the differences or the improvements that you've seen across the base, this being your 3rd time here?
So that's an interesting question, especially over the years. I think from our previous, time discussing this to now, I would say, unfortunately, there's good and bad to that, right? with the fact that we're in a theater with the conditions that we have, you can see how much the base has been affected by the conditions from my first time here to now. But the good thing is you're starting to see that being addressed. And when I say that, I'm talking about facilities, the condition of them, the fact that we have so many buildings that are being condemned or needing to be repaired. But the great thing is you're seeing the focus at the installation from PACAF headquarters is funding those fixes and making life better for us. And it's just one of those things where money doesn't go in places it's not needed, and until it's broken, often it's not needed. And so now that things have started to break here, we're really seeing a significant effort to improve life for the families and our airmen that are working in facilities. But from my first time here, I think the biggest focus was I came here in 2003 as a staff select, and the thing that's made this base great is the leaders that I've had while I've been here. I had two amazing leaders when I was in the comm squadron, Colonel Gerhardt and Captain Waters. Both just happened to be academy grads, but they were the type of leaders who really helped me first understand what it meant to praise in public, punish in private. They dealt with every situation with humility, and they were extremely good at with how they carried themselves and with how they addressed large groups of people. Colonel Gerhardt was an amazing orator, and before he left us, he ensured that he communicated to us about what he viewed the future of the Air Force to look like. And he was spot on. He talked about how the Air Force was designed to be fat because we needed to have additional bodies for the what ifs. We weren't designed for just daily ops. We were designed to be prepared for, whatever would come. And then he had said, post 9/11, we had sort of become very contracted, oriented, and we should expect to have a situation where we were going to be expected to do more with less, and that's certainly what ended up happening. My second time here as a log planner, we had, it was like the golden era of Kadena. We had Chief Master Sergeant Colon Lopez, CZ, ended up being the first Air Force SEAC, and then we had Chief Wright, who worked in dental and ended up being the SimSAC. So it was a great opportunity as a young Master Sergeant to receive a lot of really good mentorship and grow as a young leader and see people who really knew how to do it right. And then this time, it's been call it a time of transition. Right? I've been here about 6 months, and new squadron commander, new wing commander, lots of new squadron commanders within the group, and so I think we've done a good job of maintaining the status quo, and I think it's an exciting time to see what all these new leaders have in store for us and see where we go. So TBD on this thing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we talked a little earlier, and you had mentioned that on one of your assignments you was pulled away from your family for 3.5 years, correct? Mm-hmm. And that had you contemplating retirement a little bit. So clearly family, but what are some other factors that helps you stay motivated and makes you still want to put on the uniform every morning?
Yeah, so the longer you're in, you start to think about that, right? Why do I get up and continue to put this uniform on and go into work, especially once you get past 20 years, because it's not a requirement anymore, right? You have the ability to retire. I would say I do it, first and foremost, because I still enjoy putting this uniform on, and I feel like I can still offer something, not just to the Air Force, but to the airmen under my charge. And I think that's the critical aspect. I think coming up through the ranks, at one time I wanted to be an SEL, but that desire is not necessarily where my focus is now. After making it to Senior Master Sergeant and moving to staff, I did 3 staff jobs in a row, and that really pulled me away from being around airmen. One, I was in a lot of joint environments, and 2, being on staff, typically the lowest ranking people are tech sergeants or master sergeants, and so you just don't get a lot of opportunities to one, mentor, mold, assist, and so your focus becomes far more operational and far more internalized, and that wasn't necessarily what I wanted my last experience in the Air Force to be. So that's why I fought hard to get back here to Kadena, where I felt like I could, before I got here, my focus was on the IDRC because that's where my position's at, but now being D-Flight, just impacting as many airmen as I can, being there to provide what they need, being open enough to hear what they need, whether that's work related or personal, and then just at least feeling like I'm providing a service and doing something that benefits the airmen at large. I would say is what predominantly keeps me going. And I think if I ever feel like I'm more of a hindrance than I am a benefit, it's definitely time to go.
Sure, absolutely. With that being said, we all know that every story, every career eventually does come to an end. Have you thought about what the end looks like for you, or how retirement looks like for you?
Oh yeah, I think once you get closer to 20 years, you definitely start thinking about it. And as a planner, I know I've got multiple plans and what that might look like. Much like budgeting, I always have multiple budgets for any potentiality. And so for my retirement plans, I've had plans to retire 3 times already, based off of circumstances, promotions, things of that nature. So 20 years was going to be it. Made senior, and so I was like, well, my commitment takes me beyond 20, and requires another service commitment for a PCS. And then thought senior was going to be it. When we moved to Tampa, we built a beautiful home. My wife had retired. We found a nice area to live, and so we were like, well, this is going to be it. This is awesome. There's lots of jobs, beautiful area. Made chief, and so we had to have a long, hard discussion about what that looked like for our family, and we decided that we're going to take the stripe. I say we a lot. At a certain point, your career becomes more than just your own decision, and my wife definitely view it that way. So we definitely make decisions as a collective. But when I went to Shaw, we knew that it was going to be time away from the family, but I had the ability to get home a lot. And then, but moving forward from there, I would say I would love to stay at Kadena for my remaining 6 years. It's just not really completely within my control. We have a chief assignment process just like everybody else, and there are checks and balances in that to ensure that you don't have chiefs just hanging out, not really serving the Air Force. And I understand that part of it. I hope that's not who I become or how I'm viewed. I feel like my intent to stay here is definitely to continue to benefit Kadena and give back in areas where I feel like Kadena has given a lot to me. But if that's not what ends up working out for us, then maybe the end of this tour is the end of the road, because with the family being heavily involved in the decision, if the location that we're expected to go doesn't line up with what the family wants, then that will definitely play a huge role. Location is very critical for the family. But if I'm able to stay, all the better. We would be super stoked, and we would definitely continue to work hard to build Kadena and make Kadena as good as it can be. But yeah, so there's options. Would love to stay for 30, but if 27 is what the Air Force decides is the end for us, then we're ready.
Absolutely. So looking at your career a little bit, it looks like around the 10-year mark or so, you cross-trained into logistics planning. Can you speak to some of the benefits and also some of the challenges that came with cross-training?
Yeah, so a lot of apprehension, a lot of anxiety. So with my cross-training, it was, you could say, forced. We had to do humanitarian coming out of Langley, and due to this Kadena being my wife's home of record, we were fortunate enough to come back here, and we were both comm troops. And the initial thing they do is they look to see if they can place you in career and positions within your career field. They were able to find a position for my wife, and at the time they said they couldn't find a position for me. We later came to find out that there were lots of positions for me, but you know, that's water under the bridge now. And so, you know, as previously mentioned, you know, they give you a list of jobs, and so that's nerve-wracking, right? You're like that's it? That's the whole list? Like, what about these other jobs that are out there? But due to the fact that with humanitarians, they often move you with no tech school because they're trying to expedite the process, there's only so many jobs that have short enough tech schools that require mostly OJT that they can walk you into pretty quickly. So fortunately, they gave me log plans, which ended up being the perfect job for me. But at the time, I had no idea what to expect, other than I was at NCOA when I found out, and one of the individuals in my class was a log planner. He didn't necessarily have the best attitude about the career field, but at least he was able to give me some information about what to expect. So when he told me I'd be closer to the aircraft, I'd be working with deployments, I was super stoked, because as comm, you're definitely I felt like it when I was in the career field, like we were just support. Obviously, they're far more than that, but you were just so disconnected from the actual operators and the aircraft, and the only time people really cared what you did is when it was broken. So being able to get closer to the primary mission of the Air Force seemed like a really cool opportunity, and it has been. So it all worked out, but definitely a lot of ups and downs throughout the process. I think the biggest challenge once I got in the door was being a tech sergeant and then making master sergeant first time while here. Sounds great, but definitely wasn't in the moment, because once you make master, you're expected to be not just a SME, but you're expected to lead, and then I was expected to lead a group of people that obviously knew far more than me. So the only way I survived that was, one, I had fantastic human beings on the other side of that wall that were willing to train me, deal with a lot of my stupid questions, and just go over things over and over until I got it. And then two, I had to make a shift internally, and go from being that expert in my previous career field to, you know, humbling myself, and understanding that I knew less than everybody that I was in charge of, empowering them to speak at meetings on my behalf, not because I was being lazy, but because I just didn't have the answers that they did, and trusting my subordinates to speak on my behalf in many situations, but then pushing myself to quickly be capable of doing it. So it was a lot of hard work, and very scary throughout the process, but very rewarding once I got to the other side.
Absolutely. So originally a comp troop, was there some skills that you were taught in that career field that transitioned easy over to logistics, or helped you bring a new outlook to the logistics career field?
Yeah, so I think yes, just not necessarily directly translating, right? Initially, they abused me when I became a log planner, and they were like, oh, look, you're a former cyber, so you can do everything comm related. So I did all the inventories, all the MSec, all the OPSEC, all that type of stuff. Every one of those additional duties automatically became mine. And it was cool, because those were easy for me at the time, and I enjoyed them. But they also kind of like gave me a way to, maybe not in a good way, but prevent myself from moving forward as a log planner. So definitely had to figure that out. But while in comm, the great thing about being a 3CO when I initially came in is how involved we were with everything. And there were about 5 elements within the 3CO spectrum that we controlled. And so we were expected to learn about all of those as we developed to NCOs. And so you became very well-rounded. That was one of the things the Air Force loved and didn't love, because when I initially came in, there was huge bonuses for people that were cross-training to come into that career field. And the reason for that is because a lot of people were coming in for 4 years, getting out and making very good money on the outside. So eventually they downsized that side of comm, and they specialized all those things that we all used to learn, and they became 5 different career fields. And the Air Force has since come back from that to slightly, because they realized they over-specialized, and so now they need troops that can do far more. But being fortunate enough to be in that part of the career field where we did all of it, I think it made it an easier transition to a log planner. Not that log planners do a lot of different things, but they are expected to be very familiar with what a lot of other career fields do. And so and I like to view the deployment machine, whereas, your log planners really don't execute anything within that process, but they have to command and control that process. And so they have to know and understand what each element does, what their limitations are, what their processes entail, how they integrate with one another. And so growing up as an airman, learning from multiple caveats within the same career field, I think it prepared me better to learn the deployment process and then understand it as I moved forward. So I think there were definitely the breadcrumbs laid in my early career, but nothing truly prepares you for wing level ops. And so definitely was a trying time, but love it nonetheless. So
yes, sir, absolutely. So sir, we hear a lot about developing a leadership style. You have your supervisors that may not be as involved on the daily operations, but they're excellent writers. Or you might have some supervisors that lack in that area, but total subject matter experts can just make your day-to-day life a lot easier. What went into you and how you learned how to have your own leadership style? Did you have a specific mentor that you was like, I want to model some of that and develop it into my own style? Or was there even leaders that you was like, I don't think I want to necessarily be like that?
Yeah, great question. So early on in my career and throughout most of my early career, I think I got it completely wrong. I totally spent most of my time focused on all of the individuals, all the leaders that I didn't want to emulate. And most of the conversations I would have with people about mentorship always came back to, I don't want to lead like that. I don't want to be like him. I don't want to do that like her. It was always focused on what I didn't want to be. And so it wasn't until I came here as a logistics planner, and I had a senior master sergeant, Jason Mays, who retired as a 2G chief, sit me down. We were having one of those mentorship chats, and he was very eye-opening for me. And throughout one of our conversations, he stopped me and he was just like, "That's great, Matt. You're really good at telling me what you don't want to be like, but I haven't once heard you tell me what kind of leader you want to be." And it caused me to take a complete pause. I was speechless. I didn't know how to respond to that. And it took me a minute to realize that I didn't. I had no idea what kind of leader I wanted to be. And it forced me to really take account for who I was and how I was developing myself, and the things that I found important. So I had to really internalize that conversation and then start to figure out what kind of leader I wanted to be. And I think what was most important about that is, I don't know if I necessarily ever came up with my leadership plan or leadership style, but I made important decisions about what was important to me on how I developed the team, how I interacted with the team, what types of things I wanted to ensure teams that I was responsible for would focus on, and how I would engage with those teams. And so it definitely was a turning point in my career, and it played a huge role in how I continued to develop myself as a senior NCO.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So with our airmen who will eventually become leaders and your NCOs who are leaders into some capacity now, how would you, or what type of advice would you give to us to help try to find that leadership style earlier rather than later?
Yeah, so be better than me. Definitely seek out those mentors early. And this is something that the Air Force has put a lot of emphasis on. Sometimes we get it right as Air Force, sometimes we don't. Intentional mentorship is not a bad thing, but everybody is not going to be your mentor. And I think sometimes that's where we maybe get the messaging wrong. Everybody has the ability to be a mentor, but that doesn't mean they're going to be your mentor. And so mentorship is extremely personal, and I think each individual, one, has to take the first step on their own and kind of figure out, what do I see for myself? What do I want for myself? And you may not have the whole answer when you ask that question, but at least gives you an idea of the direction you want to go, and the type of people you want to seek out. And there's still nothing wrong with identifying behaviors you don't want to be like. But at the end of the day, if you're not focused on building yourself, you're missing out on opportunities. And so my biggest piece of advice is find mentors early. Find a mentor within your career field, because we all want to get promoted, and typically the mentors within your career field are going to be the ones that are going to teach you how to do it right. They're going to make you technical experts. They're going to teach you how to write within your career field so that you can be visible and seen as a star performer. And they're going to be in your career field potentially long term to continue to mentor you as you grow. And then as you grow, the longer you're in, as you make connections outside of your career field, it's definitely beneficial to find a mentor that's not within your career field, because they give you that second set of eyes. So say for an award or even an EPB, because sometimes in our LRS career fields we don't always have our own AFSC reviewing our records. So if we write things that are very specific to our career field, it's not going to be easily recognizable potentially for how big of an impact it was. And so when you get somebody outside of your career field, and when I say outside, I'm not even talking like TMO, 2G, or fuels supply. I'm talking comptroller, security forces, somebody who doesn't have a clue what we do. And so when they look at whatever you're providing them, they can ask those questions that that board member might ask. Right. And so it really will help you develop yourself, develop your writing style, develop leadership styles, because they're also going to ask tough questions in relation to things that aren't necessarily things we think about in LRS. And so as you mature, as you stay in longer, definitely get your mentor within the career field, and then if possible, get yourself one outside the career field. It's only going to make you stronger. And then ask the right questions. How can I be better? How can I grow? How can I develop myself further? What can I do to be a better leader? What kind of skill sets do I need to properly grow a team, to develop a team? Instead of less focus on just, me.
Right.
I often, in conversations with other senior leaders, when we sit down on boards and we're looking at packages, I say, all right, guys, what are we trying to promote? Me's or we's? Because there's a lot of me's, and we do encourage that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with developing yourself, especially early on in your career. That's got to be the focus. But as you get higher up in rank, we're definitely looking for the we's, people that are developing teams, people that are influencing larger numbers of people. And so that would be the advice I would give. It's a lot, but internally focused early, make sure you got mentors, and as you mature, as you gain rank, make sure you're looking for a mentor outside the career field and start focusing on the we over the me.
Sure. So in the military, there's going to be times where you're going to be handed something that you have no experience with, and the expectations going to be, I need you to figure this out. Is there a point in time in your career where you can think that everything just kind of started to click, like no matter what situation was brought to you, it's like, I got it?
So I think it started early in my career, probably before I was even an NCO. I came into the Air Force a little bit later. I was, in my early 20s, and so I was ready and looking for a change in life, and I was extremely grateful for being in the Air Force. So when I was in A1C, I got my first program to manage. It was a small program, but I was beyond ecstatic about having it. I was like, my leadership trusts me. They gave me this is mine, I own it, and I just obsessed over it to the point where I would be at work till 5-6 o'clock at night, and my master sergeant was like, if you don't get out of here, I'm writing you an LOR. And I didn't understand why he was doing that at the time, but it was all about balance, right? It'll be here tomorrow. Just come in at 7:30, you can work on it, you got time. And then when I went to Korea as a senior airman, same thing. I was fortunate enough to have a master sergeant who saw fit to put me in an NCO position and manage a position above my skill level. And I think it was just the trust people put in me, let me know that I was capable of doing more than I had even thought myself. And the fact that people viewed me that way made me want to work even harder so I could prove that their trust and faith in me was appropriate. And so I'd say that was where the big shift happened. And then just it continued. But there's been lulls within my career field or within my career where I've had down moments and I don't feel like I've operated at the level I should have, and then they've happened even as a senior NCO, and it just takes a moment of reflection to look at yourself and hold yourself accountable and get back on track. But definitely early on in my career was when that really kind of opened my eyes, and the fact that people were willing to put trust and faith in me to manage programs no matter how small. That was a huge thing for me, and it meant a lot.
Absolutely. So, sir, we're having some already established changes happen in the military with dress and appearance, and a lot of them rumored to be on the way, specifically with fitness standards. With that, within our technology age, we have a lot of social media. Can you speak to a little bit about the benefits of having things like Reddit or the Airman Senior NCO page, or Instagram, things like that, but not necessarily like official information?
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to some of the pros and then also some of the cons of getting the information from those sources?
Yeah. So I think, well, one, I look at Airman NCO, Senior NCO every day. Sometimes it gives me a good chuckle. But two, there tends to be some pretty good information in there. I would say the only negative side to it, well, maybe not the only, but the biggest negative I see to it is the fact that a lot of the stuff that's being shared is obviously being taken with a phone off of somebody else's account, likely not the member who got the email. And so there's definitely a lack of integrity there. But I understand the desire to get information out to the masses. I just wish it was via a little more appropriate means. With that said, the benefit of it is without a doubt the fact that as generations, get younger, so to speak, right? Like I keep getting older. You guys are so super young. Your generation is just used to getting things fast. You're used to having instant access to information and not having to wait on necessarily guidance, so to speak. And I could see how that's frustrating, especially when the rumor mill starts and you start to hear about these things and you're like, well, why can't they just tell us? Why can't they just release it? Why can't they just give us the information we need? And I certainly understand that. And I think those resources definitely kind of satisfy that, that appetite to have that information. The problem with it is with change in any large organization, especially the military, with a lot of the checks and balances, is there's a process. And so even if the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force or the wing commander or the squadron commander wants to make changes, there's typically a chain of command that those things have to go through to be vetted and then to be finally approved. And so sometimes if that information is coming out too early, it's not even the right information, because it's probably going to change 2 or 3 times before it gets out to the masses. And so one, it can spin people up and get people really frustrated and upset about things that may not be 100% accurate. And two, it can potentially cause issues with the fact that senior leaders are now being forced to answer questions about things that they may not be prepared to, because again, they're waiting for the finalization of that. Do I think there's a happy medium? Do I think there's something that we could do as an Air Force to improve that? Yes, and I think that they are trying to do that. Just recently, I think yesterday or the day before, got an email from the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force or his team, and they pushed it out so that we will have more fidelity on a lot of the things that are being talked about.
Field notes, right? Was it field notes?
I believe so, yes. And I think that is a fantastic first step. I hope that continues to grow as they've now opened it up for questions. I think if they wait a full month to start answering those questions, it won't be as effective as it could be. So hopefully they figure out a way to navigate the monthly publish with responding to a lot of the questions they get. But again, every leadership team is going to deal with things differently. This team has been very deliberate about how they've developed their communications with the Air Force. And now that they're coming out, I would expect that to continue to evolve and speed up as they become more comfortable with the changes that they're making. But again, it still doesn't help us down at the tactical level from the perspective that there's a lot of uncertainty. And so I think the best we can do is continue to ask the questions of our senior leaders. The benefit we have with being on a wing is our command chiefs tend to be really tied in to the Chief Master of the Air Force and the MAGCOM command chiefs, and they'll often get information ahead of a lot of other entities. And so once they get good guidance, they usually push it. If they know something's going to be published on 1 September, they'll typically let us know, hey, 1 September, it's going to be good to go. This is what you can expect. And so I would anticipate that to continue to be the way it's probably going to be conducted. But regardless, change is change, and change is difficult at times, right? Many of us are resistant to change, and so we just have to continue to understand that as we start focusing more on readiness and training, things are going to continue to evolve, whether they're dress and appearance standards, whether they're physical fitness standards. They're not always great, right? I loved my patch, my plantar patch. I thought it was a great thing that we had, but I understand the reason for the change. And if we understand at the core of all these changes is bringing us back to being more standardized as a collective force, I think it helps us better understand the purpose behind it. But still doesn't mean it's not disappointing to us as individuals, maybe on certain aspects, whether it's a dress and appearance thing. The physical fitness ones, I think, that's just a shocker because, we've trained to 1.5 miles since 2002. And so this is going to be a massive change for everybody, even though it's, just a 1/2 mile. But, when your last bit of energy is being expended at 1.5, that extra 1/2 mile is going to feel like a long way. So we're just going to have to deal with it collectively, and we're going to have to work hard together to get through. And then trust that our senior leaders are giving us what we need when we need it. But that still doesn't mean as airmen you can't demand more earlier, and hopefully if enough of you are making those requests, that information will come out sooner than later.
Absolutely, yes, sir. So with I don't know if I want to call it refocus, but let's just say refocus on training, readiness, and things like that. Something that will come along with that is going to be tasking deployments, TDYs, things like that. Through your 24 years, do you happen to have a deployment that stood out above the rest as your favorite, or one that stood out to be your not favorite?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily categorize them as favorites or not favorites. Each one was unique in its own right because they were at completely different aspects of my career. My first deployment was as an A1C in the comm career field, and I went to Prince Sultan Air Base, and my deployment was post 9/11 but pre Gulf War II, and that was still back in the 90-day deployments, which sounds insane nowadays when everything's 6 months to or longer. But the Air Force just wasn't in the business of deploying a lot back then, and it was a wild experience because I think again us old hats, when we hear the terms like MRA, MCA thrown around, it kind of grinds our gears, so to speak, because we've always been that way. At least that's how we were groomed. I know when I was on my deployment, I was a cyber operator, and back then they had what they called 39 vans. They were big green trucks that managed phones and computers, and my job was operator on the telephone. I was a telephone operator switch at Prince Sultan Air Base, and I was responsible for taking calls, transferring them to the States, letting them know when they had 1 minute left of their 15 minutes, and then disconnecting and putting the next person online. But because I hated that job and I wanted to do more, I was working with the telephone switch operators, and they taught me how to do patch panels. They took me out in the field troubleshooting, but I also was the 28 PAX bus driver. And so we did whatever we needed to do in those environments. And then when there were bear-based setups, you'd have CE, COM, FSS, security forces. Everybody was helping set tats up. Everybody was helping run cyber cable. Everybody looked out for each other. Everybody did whatever they could to make the mission go. So that's the Air Force I grew up in. So it's interesting now that we're going back to that, and I love it. I think we got really specialized in the middle there, and now we're starting to get back to that total airman concept. Like, hey, if you wear the uniform, you can do quite a bit. I don't necessarily think we need a term for it. It's just called being an airman, but I understand the need behind putting a term against it, so we can maybe get after the training and codify some things. But then the second deployment that's memorable was Baghdad, just because of the environment. It was at the height of the war in Iraq. Every day, car bombs and things like that going off post. Some so large, you felt the aftershocks just walking around base. Pretty wild environment. I wouldn't describe it as scary, but just definitely you moved cautiously, and you were always a little apprehensive about anything you saw that just seemed out of the sorts, just because you just never knew. We had a great base defense, but it was just one of those things where, unless you knew who that person was, you're always a little cautious about everything going on. But cool mission. You got there and they told you, all right, pick 2 days, and you're like, for what? To come in an hour late because you're working every day you're here. And but you knew you were supporting a great mission. I worked in the Joint Operations Center there, supporting the Fort Bragg Army unit, and learned a lot. They briefed General Petraeus and General Austin before he was a SecDef. He was, obviously a 3 and a 4 star in the Army, and just really neat to see how those interactions and the development of those products are put together to brief senior leaders. And then I would say the last one, call that the fun one, I guess, because it was LUD. But working with special ops there, had an opportunity to travel around a few countries in the theater and work with some really cool mission sets and move some good units to some unique places for some unique mission sets. So just a really cool opportunity for that one. And my only deployment as a log planner. And so definitely enjoyed that. And that one will stay memorable with me because I kind of promoted myself out of 2G deployments, which sucks. But yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So with deployments or even just longer TDYs, for somebody like yourself has families, you're getting pulled away from them, or even for somebody who doesn't have immediate family members, but you're still getting pulled away from your normalcy. What are some strategies you use to help cope and deal with the stressful times, and what advice could you give to the younger airmen who haven't faced those challenges yet?
Yeah, so serving as long as I have, my first deployment, we didn't even have access to video communications of any kind. So we were lucky enough to have both my wife and I, even though we were just dating at the time, in the comm career field. So we had the ability to call each other pretty much anytime we wanted. And then we had the ability to call home to the States. But back then, you couldn't necessarily call to your home. You had to call to the nearest installation to your home. Have them either call your phone card, or if it was a local number, you could have them call your home and be connected that way. So it was a much different environment on how you could communicate. And then second one, extremely expensive internet and connectivity, but you were able to do some video, very granular, very low bandwidth, but it was still, you could see people to an extent, and you could set up phone numbers so that you could get voice messages and things like that. So it was much better than, obviously, last time we all had cell phones and laptops and stuff, so it was great. But my advice to anybody else going through that, especially first-time deployers or young deployers that don't have necessarily spouses or children, but just extended family, whether that be your parents, grandparents, have a plan before you go in to set up either days or ways to communicate with them, and try to stay as committed to that plan as possible. That reach back, that grounding ability of your family is so important, because when you're in those environments, sometimes things you don't even know are going to affect you actually do affect you in ways that you're not expecting. And then I would say, while you're there, it's grueling, it's demanding, typically 10, 12, 14-hour days every day without break. So the more you can do to be resilient, build a routine. For me, it was always work, gym, sleep, except in LUD, you work, gym, go to the hooch, then sleep, because you get your 2 beers a day. Right. And that was a chance for camaraderie. There's 4 or 5 of us that would just get together and kind of just chill out for the day, and so it was always good. And then that would be the third piece, is you have a unique opportunity when deployed to build friendships and relationships with people that you may never see again in your career, from other career fields that you may be tied with or interacting with, or just happen to run into at the gym or the hooch or the chow hall. And so cultivate those, and those are the people that you're going to call to lean on later if you go through some shared adversity, or just even shared camaraderie, and they're people that'll be 20 years down the line, you'll be able to talk to them, and just because you've experienced things together, the relationship that you guys build, the bond you build, just lasts, and it makes it through a lot of things that other friendships sometimes don't make it through. So I'd say if it was 3 things, it would be have a plan to communicate with loved ones, have a routine that includes resilience of some kind, and then cultivate relationships with your peers and your coworkers when you're downrange.
Yes, sir. So we got one more for you. We fielded a good amount of questions from the team, from other wingmen just in the military, when you said you would do the interview, and more or less one was always above the rest. So climbed the ranks, made it to chief. 1% of the enlisted corps end up making it to chief. So as you stand now, what is some what is some advice that you would go back and give Airman and NCO Croswell?
This one's easy. Shut up. Yeah. So as we talked about a little bit earlier, I talked about how I struggled with being emotional over being passionate. And early in my career, I was definitely what you would consider cocky, arrogant, headstrong. There weren't many conversations I went into where I didn't already know the answer, or at least I thought I did, right? And sometimes I did, and I was right, but my approach and my delivery was off, and so I was ineffective. And so one thing I had to learn the hard way, oftentimes being sternly corrected by tech sergeants, or even just coming out of a situation knowing I should have gotten the result I wanted, but I didn't because I was ineffective in my ability to communicate. I had to grow, learn, mature, and so if Airman or even NCO Croswell could have learned anything earlier, it would most certainly have been to speak a little more slowly. I mean, not so quick to speak. Listen to others. I think I spent my early part of my career waiting for people to finish talking so I could tell them what I already wanted to tell them, instead of taking what they said, thinking about it, and then kind of cultivating a proper response, which is a skill, right? I mean, it's things we all have to learn. I compare it to like watching a couple toddlers talk, right? Like, they're not listening to each other. They're just, well, hey, did you see this? Oh, nope, did you see this? And they're not like really having a conversation. They're just talking past each other. And I feel like early in my career, I communicated more like a toddler, right? I was just talking right past them because I wasn't listening to anything they had to say. Because why would I? I already knew what the right answer was. That's not true. But, that was the piece I had to grow out of. And so, I would tell myself to keep my mouth shut more often, listen and listen thoroughly, care what the other person is having to say, and then be thoughtful in my response. Definitely care more about what other people have to say than what I'm trying to get across. And I think that not only, one, gains respect with the person you're communicating with, shows them that you actually care about what they have to say, but two, it makes you effective. And at the end of the day, as senior leaders, our priority, our responsibility is to be effective leaders for our people that are under our charge. And if we can't communicate effectively, if we shut down others in conversations, we can't get to the end goal we're looking to support our people. And so it's kind of a necessity as we grow to become better communicators and better listeners.
Absolutely. Chief, we really appreciate the time. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity.